I just wanted more for myself. And so I needed to seek out and be intentional to put myself in room with people that were doing more and having more success than me in all the areas that are important to me, be it health, be it relationships, be it spiritually, be it financially. And being around those type of people shows you the possibility of what is out there.
Welcome again to the Prime Mover Podcast, where we ignite the engine of your success in faith, family, finance, and fitness. Join us as we explore the power of being a prime mover in both your professional and personal life. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Prime Mover Podcast. We are glad you joined us today. Even though our subscriber world is small and growing, I'm thankful for even one listen on this show. It's near and dear to my heart and Nick. So we put this together with a lot of intention, and even with our guests, we are doing so with a lot of intention. So with me today, I have a very, very close friend of mine, near and dear to my heart, a brother, a Barnabas, a spiritual brother. I mean, this guy is near and dear to me in a lot of ways, and he is truly, I'm going to call him for the rest of the show, the example. Geoff Jensen, thanks you for
guys.
joining us, man.
Honored to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah. So the reason why I call Geoff the example is I'll let him tell a little bit about yourself, but Geoff has done some pretty tremendous things. Geoff is, again, I won't steal his thunder, but I'm going to let him do an intro, and I'll give you some more thoughts on qualifying Geoff Jensen as a man of God, a man of his word, and a man of action, and an entrepreneur, a true visionary entrepreneur. So, Geoff, why don't you give us a little story, I guess, about who you are, where you're from, what you do,
Appreciate
and we'll
it,
go
Travis.
from there.
Thank you. So, as Travis mentioned, my name is Geoff Jensen, and I'm a man of positivity, generosity, and loyalty, and I am a joyful and faithful follower of Christ. So that is who I am. I'm currently 44 years old, just flipped the dial a few days ago. I live with my beautiful wife and 4 kids in Urbandale, Iowa, which is a suburb of Des Moines. But been a lifelong Iowan for virtually all of my life, but currently wear a few different hats. As I mentioned, my wife and I, we have 3 Smoothie Kings in town, so we run those along with a fantastic team. I also sell medical devices in that world, so I have a W-2 job as well as my wife has a W-2 job. We own some rental properties, and then we also rent out a Sprinter van. So between 4 kids and multiple businesses, we spin a lot of plates, but it keeps us busy, and it keeps us on our toes, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So that's a little bit about me. I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about the revelations that I've come across in just a short period of time since I've got to know Travis in the last year and a half. There's been a lot of things that I've been more intentional about, and it's really made a huge impact for me personally, my family, and my businesses as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, Geoff. That's probably the most clear and concise, I would say, Kingdom CV that I've ever heard. For those of you out there that don't know what a CV is, it means when you get to a level of success or a pinnacle of expertise where the word resume is something you've outgrown. So a CV is basically a collective a view of what you've done, who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in. And so I love that, Geoff. That's why I call him the example, because he carries that around with him wherever he goes. And it's not hard to let people know who you are when you know who you are. Amen. And you represent it. So, Geoff, welcome again to the Prime Mover Podcast. What we stand for here on Prime Mover Podcast is that in and of itself in the title. We value prime movers. We believe that we are prime movers, and I'm gonna do my best to only bring prime movers on the show. So again, a prime mover is something that is there first and creates the energy. He's the thermostat, or she's the thermostat in the room, not the thermometer. We're there to set the temperature, not tell the temperature. So Geoff, the one thing that I'll start off with, rather than going directly into business, is one of the things that stuck out to me is you talked about Kendi, your wife, and your 4 kids. So I want to know, in terms of as a husband and father, what advice would you give, or what is your way of showing up as a prime mover in the household,
Yeah,
even
no, I
before
appreciate that
business?
question. Admittedly, my outlook and my perspective has changed over the last year and a half, as I mentioned. Prior to that, I think I was doing well. Things were going nicely, but I came to a point where I realized that there had to be more. There had to be a next level, and so that's when I enrolled in Steve's mastermind, and you and I were able to connect and really build some strong bonds together. But I think for me, as it relates to my relationship with my wife and my kids, that besides a strong faith in God, those are the most important relationships in my mind. So everything comes after that. The way that I'm able to show up and be my best for them is ultimately, as you mentioned, determining what's most important to me. Who am I? What's important? Because there's a lot of things when you're a person that's driven, that's shooting for high goals. It's easy to get derailed if you don't have a clear sense of purpose and vision and mission. So having that has been really, really helpful for me over the last year to year and a half. But what that means is that I need to prioritize the things that are going to make me the best for my family and for my kids. So, for example, my morning routines have been essential to what I do. I get up, I get in the Word, I move my body, I push myself so that that time is not interrupted, right? And when I'm filling my cup, that allows me to fill the cup of the people that are closest in my sphere of influence. So that's been a huge thing for me. I'm also not a person of many words. I'm more analytical. I'm very thoughtful. I choose my words very carefully. So with that said, I choose to lead by example instead of preaching. And there'll be some preaching from time to time. I've got, as I mentioned, 4 kids, so they need to be taught. However, the best teacher is just me leading myself well, doing hard things, showing them that limitations are often things that we put on ourselves or put on us by other people. So if we can, raise the bar, elevate, as you said, be the thermostat in the room, things get better when I walk in because I'm there. That's been a game changer for me, and it's been phenomenal to see how my wife has reacted, how she's followed my lead and has become a better version of herself. And our kids, although they're 12, 12, 10, and 7, they see this as well. And so it's a reminder that as Jensens, we do hard things. We don't make excuses. We do things that other people don't because we're uncommon amongst uncommon people, like David Goggins said.
Mm. Yeah. No, dude, that is amazing. I was thinking where I was going as I'm listening next, and in the podcast world, I know for me, just starting out as a new host, I'm thinking about processing every word you said, and then thinking about how that's gonna prompt me for the next question. However, I kind of want to ask this and state it in a I guess almost like a paradoxical way. Um, so because Geoff, if you heard his intro, he's very self-aware. And so if you listen to our past episodes, you know how important that is to us about being self-aware and knowing what you are and what you aren't. But one thing I was thinking about with Geoff is, he's a man of positivity. And so as long as I've known him, and as long as the people that have, there are people obviously that have known him longer than me, but everyone talks about Geoff's presence, his positivity, his frame of mind. And it's going to be hard for him to say, well, if I was a negative mindset person, I couldn't explain how I look at things. So I'm naturally, like in my flesh, I'm naturally not a positive person. I have to put in work and go so into myself from a gratitude perspective in my relationships to see the positive side. And so what I'm gonna do for Geoff here is let you know, like, answering that from the outside in is, man, I've seen Geoff go through some very tough times business wise, spiritually, and we've been yoked pretty tightly for the last year and a half. And his positivity, even through a tough time, um, is inspiring to me. So I was going to ask Geoff about how does showing up as a positive, intentional, self-aware leader affect you. But if you walk in that, you probably don't know the adverse effects. So I'm here to tell you that somebody who is likely to be proclaimed as not easily inspired, your positivity and ability to maintain composure to me is unmatched, and it's inspirational, and it moves the
Oh, I
flipping needle.
appreciate that.
So I'm honoring you for showing up as such a positive
No, thank
person
you,
in my
bro.
life. So that prompts me to my next thought process is Geoff. If I were to describe Geoff and he wasn't on the show, I would talk about his intentionality and his commitment. And he said he's a not talker. Geoff doesn't talk because he gets right into action. He's not going to say that about himself, but I'll say it, that the dude is a man of action. And so before we get into how that moves the needle in his business life, Geoff started off the year, and I haven't jumped on the bandwagon yet, but he started off the year following some protocol of a mutual mentor and leadership voice in our life, Garrett Unkelbach and Nick Surface, who run the Impossible Life podcast. But he started off the year doing, I believe it's 30 days, and I want you to talk about, so this is a physical thing, a mental barrier we're breaking, but I want you to talk about this commitment to the 100 burpees
Yeah,
thing that
no,
you
thank
started
you.
off the
As,
year
as
with.
mentioned, it wasn't my idea, so I don't take credit for that. But Garrett Unkelbach, leader of the Mighty Men at Elevate Life in Frisco, he's had a profound impact in my life in a very short period of time, and I think I resonate so closely and just really am drawn to him because I feel like we think and act very similarly. He's a person of discipline, of no nonsense, of action and not words. But long story short, he proposed doing something hard for 30 days, and I didn't know before signing up that what the details were. But when he said doing something hard and doing something for 30 days, I was in. I knew it. Come to find out, the challenge is 30 days of 100 burpees, which need to be filmed. And I'm not a film guy, but I became one. 100 burpees every day, no nonsense, no excuses. You need to do a minute of cold plunge or cold shower, and that could be my kryptonite, but I'm working on it. I'm getting there. Cold is not my thing. I know that it's pretty popular of late, but so cold is not my thing. But I'm working on it, and I know Travis isn't a huge fan either. But we're sharpening our swords a little bit, and then finally you need to declare a wake up time the day before and stick to it. So those are the three. It's very basic, but I think it's a great metaphor for life because when you do hard things consistently over time, good things happen. A lot of people say they want to do hard things, but when it truly gets hard, they quit. As it just goes back to saying and talking the game is a lot easier than doing the game. So I knew that I wanted to do this. So it's just a way of reminding myself that number one, I can do hard things, and number two, I can show up, and then I can show up again, and I can show up again. And for me, doing hard things physically is a reminder that I can do hard things in any area of life. I can work through challenges in relationships. I can work through different difficulties in business. I can work through challenges with my kids. Anything and everything is going to be a challenge, and I choose my heart. I choose to do hard things because when you condition yourself and you declare yourself to be a person that does hard things, life becomes easier. It's kind of kind of a funny thing. When you do hard things, life get easy. Life get easy. It gets easier. When you do easy things, life gets harder.
Yeah. I was going to ask Nick a question on this too. Is all of us are dads of I think cumulatively we have 15 kids
It's a lot.
between the three of us. Uh, so with that said, I've had this very conversation with Geoff. It's like showing up as a dad. So now I have a 21-year-old that's out of the house, and I got a 17-year-old that's about to graduate, and my caboose is 10. And his kids run the gamut in age. So the idea of this doing hard things concept, um, when you look at fathering children and multiple children, and then also maintaining a marriage in there, and then a job and or a business, or in Jeff's case, both. In Nick's case as well, both. So in my opinion, I've described it as like a marathon of getting your teeth kicked in every day, not getting, knowing that that's going to happen at some point, Um, and this is not a knock on wives or anything, but for the most part, knowing that we'll get our teeth kicked in, knowing that we're going to have to handle a bunch of hard stuff that we didn't really plan for or really take joy in doing, but continuing to show up every day with very little tools and support in some cases, but still showing up and doing hard things. How do you think that served you like in life, or how do you see the marathon of being an intentional dad and trying to do things the right way in a world that is, so to speak, letting us down?
Oh man, I think anytime if you try to be a man of God
Mm,
and with your family, feeding your family, like Jeff alluded to, or said, I didn't allude, I think he said that, but leading your family, being there for your family, it takes persistence. It
mm,
takes you're gonna make the mistakes, you're gonna make the falls, but man, just being persistent with it. Um, it is hard things. There's always hard
mm. Yeah.
things. When the kids mess up and do something that silly or something to think,
Yep.
like our first reaction, at least
Mm.
mine anyway, I'll admit to it is I want to drop the hammer. And
That's right.
sometimes they're like, hold up, man, you need to apply some grace here,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And then there are the hard emotional things as
Mm,
well. Like my this today is my eldest daughter. We moved her out of the house over the weekend, and
mm.
she's starting college today. So it's
Hey,
kind of a
that requires a round of applause and some tears.
yeah, man. It's tough, Like so, you moving your baby girl out and into the world. You hope that you've spoke enough life into her, enough God. No, we've had midnight conversations
Mm.
about God,
Yep.
Scripture, the Bible, and so
Yep.
I think it's just um, it just takes some focus, it takes some drive. You have to be a prime mover.
Yeah.
Like that's not a accidental situation. Like
100%.
I don't know how Jeff feels about it, but love to
Yeah,
get his
no.
take as well.
Jeff, how old are
Our
your
kids, we
kids?
have twin girls. They are 12 and they are in sixth grade, so it's a very exciting and interesting stage of life. And then our third daughter is 10 and she's in fourth grade, and then our son is 7 in first grade. So we've got our hands full, but we're very blessed. They're wonderful kids. They're healthy. They're
Yeah.
happy, and I'm trying to be more mindful of enjoying the season that we're in versus being stressed out and frustrated with all of the places and things
Yeah.
that we need to do. So just trying to be mindful and
Yeah.
intentional with them.
So you do you, I know the answer to this question, but um, can you see your barrier to accepting and doing hard things growing you as a more graceful leader in your home because you openly put yourself through hard things that you can handle them when they come from your family with much
Most
more
definitely,
grace
most
and
definitely.
wisdom?
As I mentioned, positivity is one of my core values, and so it's not something that I come by naturally. So I have to be intentional about that. To your point, Travis, every day I have to remind myself that that's who I am. That's who I've declared myself to be, and so I can't be a fraud to myself. And so that does allow me to
Sure.
handle situations that potentially previously I might not have been as graceful. I might have been quick to speak and regretted it afterwards. So, one of my favorite quotes that
Mm.
I learned many, many years ago, and I try to live by it to the best of my ability, is that two times to be quiet or keep your mouth shut is when you're swimming and when you're angry. So, I try to live by that. So, it's
That's
allowed me
pretty
to be
good.
a lot more graceful with my kids and take a different approach when I'm trying to correct or teach or instruct. Um, it isn't always perfect, and I do fall and I do stumble from time to time, but uh, keeping that at the forefront of your mind and allowing yourself some grace too when you stumble, when you trip and you fall, to get back up and keep moving forward. But it's definitely changed my approach to how I interact with everyone, specifically my wife and my kids.
So pivoting, which I can talk family with Jeff all day long. I met his wife Kendi. Uh, she's as disciplined as he is, so he's setting a darn good example. I haven't met all his kids yet, but I gotta believe because I know in my heart that uh, as a man thinketh, so is he. And so these declarations, opening yourself up to hard things, it defines Jeff. I've watched it be transformative in his life. I've actually watched it change his business landscape as well. And so he might be a little bit more modest and humble, than I would like him to be. So I'm going to try to pull him out of his shell here. But I want to know some of the things that I wrote down from your original intro was vision, and then in a roundabout way you talked about alignment. So let's kind of go there for the next few minutes. Is what prompted you? Uh, you were a business owner. How long have you guys owned the
Yes, we've
Smoothie
been
Kings?
involved in the business since 2016. We were more passive owners, and then my wife stepped in about 2 years ago. So we started in 2016, so coming up on 8 years.
So, but you guys had a gym
Correct. Yep. We
before
had
that,
we
correct?
started a gym in 2004, so that'll be almost 20 years ago. We started a gym, and we grew that to three different locations, and subsequently we're able to provide an opportunity for the guys that work for us. That was a great joy on our end to be able to sell the business to them because they'd earned it. And my partner and I were at a stage in our life where we were able to provide that opportunity for them, and it worked out well for everyone. So we had three gyms, and then we got into the Smoothie King business, and
Amen.
as I mentioned, we have some rentals and a Sprinter van as well.
Yeah. So I want to talk more about this the Sprinter van at the end because I know about it, but I want the audience to know about it too. But um, my question was, I guess, channeling again vision and alignments. So let's talk vision first, and then we'll kind of segue into alignments. But as being a 20-year seasoned entrepreneur, again, seasoned, sometimes people think they want, you can get measure, the world can measure you by your fruit. And we talk a lot about inside our four walls here about there's multiple types of currency inside of a business. It's not always monetary currency. So, when the world says you're winning, you're probably losing. And when the world says you're losing, it's probably most likely your most winning time. So where do you see vision, you're a man of God, so you can go to the Bible, you can quote scripture or anything you want, but how do you apply your vision into your business going forward, and how long in the 20-year journey did you go without clear vision, and how do you see that vision rewarding you in corporate currency going forward? If that
Yeah,
question resonates with you, I know it was multifaceted, but primarily prioritize vision when you got it in your life and in your business, and how you see it
no,
moving the
that's a
needle going
great question,
forward.
Travis. Thank you. So you mentioned we started fresh out of school in 2004, and uh, quite frankly didn't have a vision. We just knew the extent of our vision was that we wanted to build a business. That was about it. So we had some stumbles and some trips along the way. Fortunately, none of them put us out of business. So sometimes I feel if just like a roadmap, if you don't have one, you're going to end up somewhere. You just hope it's somewhere good. So we were fortunate
Yep.
that's we ended up somewhere somewhere good. And as it relates to vision, I think it started with my personal vision, to be honest with you. Getting clear on who I am and what's important to me, because as the leader of my house, of the people in my sphere of influence of my business, when I was clear and I showed up consistently as that guy every day, and I espoused those values and those virtues, people just are attracted to and are drawn to people that know and have a clear idea of who they are and what they stand for. So as it relates to our business, it's been relatively recently, probably in the last 3 to 6 months, that I've gotten very clear on a 10-year vision, where I want to be, 10 years from now. That takes some time and some diligence to sit down and really put pen to paper and think, okay, 10 years from now, our kids, three of the four are going to be gone. Just like you mentioned, Travis, you're kind of on the tail end of kids in your house. And so that takes on a different perspective. But where do I want to be? What do I want to be doing? And then working backwards from that. So that got me a lot more clear as it relates to how I go about the interaction with people on our team, how I talk to them, the things that I share with them. Because as you mentioned, financial success is great, but if you're getting there in ways that aren't going to fulfill you or aren't getting you closer to your vision, that I think those things are fleeting. So understanding where we want to be as a business, as a family, as an individual 10 years from now, and working backwards has been very, very helpful, because it's just about establishing habits. What habits do I need to be doing consistently on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis that are going to keep moving that needle towards the 10-year vision? So getting people in the organization excited about what we're doing, and when you present a vision and you tell a story that incorporates how they're going to grow and how they're going to benefit from us all rowing in the same direction, it's been a game changer. Unfortunately, it's not an overnight. You can't flip a switch. It's more like a dimmer switch. It takes time to get people to buy in and understand the why of what we're doing. But when you're
Right.
clear on what you're doing and how you're going to make an impact, it's been such a phenomenal tool to get people excited and to be able to push through the times when it really stinks, when it's really hard. Because as we talked about earlier, a lot of people say they want to do the hard work, they like to do hard things, but when it really when it really stinks and things are getting tight and you have to work a little extra, that's what hard feels like. That's what it feels like. And a lot of people don't like that feeling, myself included. But doing hard things requires some sacrifice. So having a clear vision gets people to push through when things get hard and we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jeff, just a quick question. You kind of mentioned about setting that 10-year goal and working backwards. Just as I guess, courtesy to our listeners and stuff, like what advice would you give somebody who's, I always like to go to the practical. So what advice would you give somebody who's, man, just not really good at goal setting, never sat down and went to goals? Would you advise them to start at a 5-year goal, or hey, go all the way to that 10-year goal, and this is how to work backwards? Could you kind of just speak? I mean, you don't have to get into super details, but just kind of give them
Yeah,
a
no, that's
framework
great.
on
Great
that.
question. I always love the practical side too, so appreciate the question. Having a 10-year vision has been very enlightening for me because, as I mentioned, it was relatively recently that I put one together. But the way that I did it, and it might not be a one size fits all, but you just work your way backwards. If you have the first thing that I did that was very helpful is what does your idea of rest look like? We talked about Sila. What does it look like to what are the things that bring you peace? And that doesn't mean necessarily sitting on a beach in Mexico. It might, but sometimes it might be out in your field tending to your cows. It might be doing a 100-mile race. What are the things that bring you joy and fill your cup? And how can I do more of that? So that was the first question that I asked myself. And what does it look like? What does my relationship with my wife look like? How do I interact with my kids? How do I, treat my relationships and those that I care about? And then create a life that you are excited about and want to put the work in to achieve. And so working back from that, obviously there's a financial component that needs to be incorporated. If you say I would like a second home, or I'd like to be able to go on mission trips, or whatever your idea of success and Sila is, being able to underwrite that is extremely important. So then working backwards, if I need X amount of dollars on a monthly or annual basis, I can work back and say, here's where I'm at currently in today's numbers and where I'm at today. Here's where I want to be, and then start putting together a 6-month, 1 year, 3-year, 5-year plan to continually move towards it. And as important, at least for me, as the goals are, it's the habits. What are the habits that I'm going to create on a daily basis? For business, for example, how many sales calls do I need to make a day? How many, what does a great customer experience look like, and how do I continually refine that and work on that? How can I make an impact every single day that I can start to quantify and I can start to measure to know if I'm getting closer to that 10-year vision? So if you break it into 1 year goals, 3, 5, and then 10-year goals, that kind of sets a roadmap for where you want to be. But as I mentioned, for me, having those daily habits, and a lot of it just comes back to filling my cup so that I can fill everyone else's cup. I want to be a person that is healthy and happy and can interact with my kids in a very dynamic way for many, many, many years. So that means I need to prioritize my health right now, because it's easier to do it now than to do it later. So establishing habits and coming up with a game plan has been really a life changer for me, and I'm excited for where I am going, and then ultimately where I'm going to be in 10 years.
Beautiful.
For sharing that. Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, and so even if somebody's interested, if you want to leave a comment or send us an email or go to our website, primemoverpodcast.com, and drop us a line. If you're interested in like a 10-year vision worksheet, we could provide you a template that I've used, that Jeff has used, and it's a pretty good tool. And so in the long and short of what he said was, it was beautiful because when he talked about the 10-year vision, and even when Nick asked him to expound on the answer, you could compare it to a roadmap. Back before everything in the world had a GPS on it. uh, we had to travel with road maps. And so if I'm leaving, the great state of Louisiana, I'm driving up to the great state of Iowa to see Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and assume that's probably a 10-hour drive. And so I'm 42 years old. I can't drive 10 hours without ski. So I'm looking at this map and thinking, here's the areas we want to stop. Here's our approximate miles per gallon. Here's about where we have to get gas. And some people, here's where we got to eat. And so maybe we'll spend the night somewhere and be real strategic and intentional about it. And some people are just like, hey, I'm going to put my foot on the gas. I'm going to go as far as I can go, get gas, and then I'll go as far as I can go and then get gas. Um, but typically when you do that, you miss the little things along the way, and it allows you, it steals the opportunity to be present along that 10-year journey. And so for me, I've kind of been doing my best to coin the phrase or live out the phrase that I want to live my legacy versus leave it by being intentional of what my 10-year vision is. And then hopefully when I reach my 10-year vision, I can cast another 10-year vision. And the remainder of my time here, however long or short it may be, will have receipts of intentionality that along the way I planned out when I was going to stop and get fuel, when I was going to stop and visit family along the way, or when I was going to, make a turn, and when I was going to have to pivot, or when I got, an icy bridge, pun intended, because it's super cold here in South Louisiana. Not as cold as where Jeff is, but nonetheless, I think living your legacy and planning it out and being super intentional by using a tool of a 10-year, something like a tool of a 10-year vision is monumental. One thing I want to highlight that Jeff said, this is super important. This is going to be like my opinion. This is what you subscribe to the podcast to hear today. Everybody that comes on is going to bring a nugget, and Jeff's best may be yet to come. But I wrote down underwriting your SELA concept or way of lifestyle. And a SELA is a place of peace, a place where you go to get away from the hang-ups and habits of the outside world, a place where you can become one, find yourself, true peace and relationship with the Lord. And so Jeff said, when Nick asked him about his 10-year vision, what tools do you use? Well, you got to start with what you want and where you want to be in 10 years. So if I look at a roadmap to drive to Iowa, I know that I'm going to not going to Des Moines. I'm going to, Jeff's hometown, Bellingrath, right? Is that what you said? What was it? Urbandale, yeah. I looked at a house on Bellingrath. Maybe that's what it was. But Urbandale, Iowa, that's my destination. So if my destination is financial success, or I want to, do life with my cattle, or I want to travel with my family, or I just want to stay home, or I want to buy a vacation home, or I just want more time to serve the church, or I want more time to serve people and give back to others, my 10-year vision has to start with a destination. And so don't overcomplicate it by saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. Well, neither do I. But if you don't know where you're going, you're going to have a hard time figuring out how to get there. So underwriting that SELA way of life, which is what you do for more joy and peace. How do I do more of that? That is a great way to figure out how to cast a 10-year vision. Start with what the fruit needs to look like in your life in 10 years. And so along the way, while I was building that, I was fortunate enough that I've been able to build my 10-year vision right alongside of Jeff. And what inspired my 10-year vision to go and to grow and to be more audacious with my 10-year vision is the alignments in my life. The people that I choose to do life with, my family of choice, Jeff being one of those guys. If you are not in a room, I think there's an old saying, not as good as keeping your mouth shut when you're swimming and angry. But that's a good one. But if you're the smartest person in the room, find a new room. If you're the fastest person in the room, find a new room. If you're the best looking in the room, find a new room, because you're capping your growth off like fleas in a jar. When fleas are trained in a jar and eventually you take the lid off, the fleas will only jump to the height of where they hit their head on the lid, not realizing that they're almost out of the jar. So how have alignments leveled you up towards your 10-year vision, but overall speaking in life, how have alignments helped you to move towards your
Oh,
10-year
that's a great
vision?
question, Travis. Thank you. So, yeah, the old cliche of you are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. Most of us have heard that for years, and like a lot of people, it went in one ear and went out and out the other ear until. And I hate to keep beat the dead horse, but until about a year and a half ago, I knew that I'm very blessed with a lot of great friends, and I knew that I just wanted more for myself, and so I needed to seek out and be intentional to put myself in rooms with people that were doing more and having more success than me in all the areas that are important to me, be it health, be it relationships, be it spiritually, be it financially. And being around those type of people shows you the possibility of what is out there. Because when you're around people that are doing good things but not great things, you're going to settle for good because that's your reality. So putting yourself in rooms with guys that are having phenomenal marriages, guys that are doing great in business, guys that are super fit and on the cover of magazines, it allows you those people and it allows you access to pick their brains and mine for wisdom to find out, hey, what's working for you? Because a lot of times as we're on our journey to become the best version of ourselves, we feel as though we're the only one on the climb. No one else understands our problems. No one's been on this journey before. But you realize very quickly that there are very few paths that are unique to you. There's very few challenges and hurdles that are unique to you. And when you put yourself in rooms and into the vicinity of people that are doing great things, they can give you the shortcut. Instead of taking the A to Z route, they can say, hey bro, take this path, go A to B, and you'll be there in no time. And so seeing the possibility has been a game changer for me, being around people that are really making things happen, and then hopefully bringing something to the room myself. I'd like to think I bring discipline, I bring loyalty, I bring commitment, and some people don't have those traits as much as I do, and so I can be an example for them in those areas as well. So being in a mastermind, being in a group, it's a way that we can all collaborate to lift each other up simultaneously. So that's been phenomenal. And then ultimately, when I come back to my sphere of influence in town, having been around those type of guys, understanding what's possible, I can start to elevate the people that I come in contact and the ones that I care about. And a quick example being, I'm not a runner, or at least I wasn't a runner until last year. And our group said, "Hey, we're gonna cap the year off with a 100-mile race." And it was far enough in advance that I said, "Okay, let's give it a shot," knowing that I'd never run further than about a mile without stopping, without walking, and putting in the work in and the dedication to the process from June until December. It was a struggle, but it was an event that I'll never forget, finishing 100 miles and the stories and the memories. But being around those type of people, 100 miles is just, that's who we are. That's what we do. And it sets you in a mindset that, yeah, that's who I am. That's what I do. And if you come and you're in a different room, they look at you like you got three heads. Who's crazy enough to run 100 miles? Who would want to do that? Now that's insane, or that's amazing. Whatever it is, it shows you the power of alignment and the people you choose to do life with. The who is exponentially more impactful and influential than the what. So once you find the right who's and the right people, then the what's almost fall into place for you.
Not almost, man. They do, and that's a word. I'm glad you ended it on that. I remember I couldn't run the 100 miler. Uh, I've got several amounts of screws and plates and metal in my lower back, and I never saw myself as a runner to begin with. And hanging around with Jeff, I accidentally have run two half
There you go.
marathons. Uh, so I've run a couple of them in Texas, and finishing them were tough on my body. It took me a long time to recover. It took me a long time for my lower back to get right. So I knew 100 miles, wasn't in the cards for me. And I watched Jeff commit to it. How long did you prepare? Maybe like four or
Yeah, I
five months, you
started
said?
middle of summertime, so I had my plan was going to couch to 100-mile plan. So that's what I started. It was just with a few miles, and then over the course of 6 months, built up and uh, culminated with 100 miles.
And you
I
finished,
did,
right?
I did, and to that point of alignment, I'll share a quick story. Is that had been going along, and it had been a long day, long night, many miles, and I got to mile 88 88.65. I never forget that number. And I was going to cash it in. I was going to quit. My mind was done. My body was done. My spirit was done. Everything was done. And our mutual friend Steve came into the sauna as I was contemplating my fate and deciding I was going to hang it up and succumbing to the flesh and agreeing with all the reasons why I should be done. He came into the sauna and I told him that I'm done. And he didn't even look at me, but he said, there's a 0% chance that you're not going to finish this race. And I said, all right, roger that. So it goes to show you that the people you choose to surround yourself with can either lift you up or they can bring you down to their level. How many people would have said, yeah, you're right, you went 88.65 miles. That's really good. That's a lot further than you've ever gone. No one's going to laugh at that, or no one's going to call that a failure. But Steve, he said he called something out of me that I didn't even know I had at that point. He said there's a 0% chance that you're not finishing. So that just reinforced to me how important the people you surround yourself with are, and being in a room with people that speak life into you, that see things in you that you might not even see in yourself. And so that goes in all different areas, whether it's marriage, relationships, your faith, your business. Being around people that have the fruit that you're looking for is a game changer.
World-class advice.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
So,
I remember along the journey. So, these guys are running 100 miles, and I'm home. I think my wife was out of town, and so I'm home with the kids, and it's like, I don't know, 10:30 at night or something. I'm in my bed and about to go to bed, and I start thinking about all these guys that's running 100 miles. And then down the list, I just start sending them videos or calling them and talking to them and seeing what way I could support, because I was so convicted of not being there that I had to add value in some way. And it was through prayer and just checking in on people. And I only get that mindset by elevating the people I spend the most time with. Like, these men have been in my life a short period of time, but when you find the right relationships and the right alignments, you truly can live out the definition of quality over quantity. That the quality of these relationships are important to me. And when you see a brother doing hard things and you know that they're forging themselves because of that, you got to get involved and you want to add value in some type of way. So, man, I know a lot of people who trained for that race who didn't get to 88.65 and ultimately didn't get to 100. And so when I introed the episode as Geoff being a man of action and a man of few words, the dude ran 100 miles. Okay, so I'm sure there's probably 1% of 1% in society who ever ran a half marathon, but much less an ultra at 100 miles. Like, that's just world class. So go ahead.
and yeah, as we're talking about being in alignment and the people, it's amazing how it works on your psyche and on your mindset. Just understanding, like right now, I'm ready to go to the gym, man. Y'all want to go?
Let's go.
I'm ready to go hit the gym. You know what I'm saying?
That's good.
Like, it's it but it really does. It just affects the way you think, the way you interact, the way you look at life as you're spending. And I think we can actually bring that back biblically and say, man, when you read scripture, like, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves, being around your brothers. And I know that particular scripture revolves back to the church, but I think it goes beyond just the church meeting and being around people who will lift you up, who are at your best interest, not at their best interest.
Yeah, others-centered.
That you're other-centered.
Yeah, you get a relationship that is others-centered, where you're there to add value and you're around people who are there to add value to you. It's exponential what you could do. Just the idea of what you just said, being inspirational. We talk a lot. We said, Geoff and I, last time we were in the same room together, I think, I don't know who it was, but that said it, but it was so true. I'm not a person who hates on anybody that doesn't value physical fitness, man. I was 360 pounds in my former life. I was lost, broken, hurt, and I hurt people because hurt people hurt people. And so how you solve that problem in many ways is, I explain this to people. If you don't have a way to usher the Lord into your heart, or you don't have a way to to push vices aside, or a way to stop sinning and being convicted of sin, or anything that's holding you back from growth. Conquer your flesh. When you can begin to conquer your flesh, that's Romans 12:1, make your body a living sacrifice, pleasing to the Lord. So you can learn to conquer your flesh. Man, it's amazing what you allow your heart to do and what you allow your mind to do in that process. So, the idea of when you value physical fitness, or when you value, not, this is not an appearance thing, when you value your physical fitness and you value yourself and who you see in the mirror, that character can enter a room before your personality gets a chance to. So when you walk in the room, and I'm going to use a short analogy here. When you walk in the room and you're jacked, and I'm about to listen to you, or you're going to speak to me, or we're going to do some life together, and you're 40 years old plus, and you're in great physical condition, and you walk in the room as a thermostat, not a thermometer, you instantly gain my respect. I know a multitude of things about you. One is that you're disciplined, and two is that you know exactly who you are and who you aren't. And so I'm attracted to that. And so if you get around people, it doesn't mean they don't have vices. It doesn't mean they don't sin. It doesn't mean they don't have struggles. But the things that they value align with what you value. So that's why having core values are so important, because you could at least know what you are and what you stand for. So it allows you to align with other people who value and stand for or stand against the same things. So, with that said, get yourself to a spot in life where your character can enter a room far before your personality does, because typically our character is way more, is tremendous, is a tremendous amount more revealing than our personality. We can change our personality depending on the room, but typically your character is pretty much concrete there. So, I wanted to go back over your core values in that scenario. Just real quick, list them out for me and for the audience, so we can understand who you are and whose you
Yeah.
are.
So I mentioned who I am when in the introduction. Man of positivity, generosity, and loyalty. My four core values, and I try to keep it simple, and it's a consistent reminder. That's part of my morning routine, is to read through my core values and the scriptures associated with. So the first one is health. Obviously, health is extremely important to me. You only get one temple, and so I'm not perfect at it by any means, but that's something that I'm diligent about, and something that I put very, very high on the priority list. So health is number one. Relationships is number two. I value relationships, and I know as men it's hard sometimes to get vulnerable, to be intentional with relationships, especially with work, family, all the things that pull on you. But I've been very diligent and committed to seeking out the people that I value, and that I want in my life. That doesn't mean it's easy, but relationships are important. Obviously, the first one, being my relationship with God. Secondly, with my wife and my family, and then my core group of people. So relationships is my second one. Generosity, as I mentioned, is another one. I want to be generous to the best of my ability with all my time, my talents, and my treasures, because it makes me happy, and it allows me to take the blessings that I've been blessed with and bless others. So generosity is my third value. And then, as I mentioned, positivity. That's not something I come by naturally. I've always kind of been a happy person, but just like everyone, life happens, and sometimes it's easy to let what happens to you dictate your outcome or your attitude. But if I can choose to be joyful, choose to be positive, and one of the maybe a practical piece of advice that I've really implemented, and it's made a huge change, is implementing Romans 8:28 into my everyday life. Understanding that all things work together for my good, for those that are called according to God's purpose. And if I understand that, and I believe that to the core of my being, I understand that even the hardest things that the world can throw at me, they're here to grow me. And as Pastor Keith says, what you go through, you got to grow through, so you can create some breakthrough. So that's the way that I'm choosing to look at hard things and challenges in my life. Is like, okay, How am I supposed to get better from this? How am I supposed to grow? What am I supposed to learn from this opportunity so that the next time it comes, it's no big deal. It's just like lifting weights. You get stronger, and next time you lift that weight, it's no big deal, and you keep leveling up and leveling up. So those are my four core values: health, relationships, generosity, and positivity. And I try to live those in who I am every single day. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I remind myself consistently in my thoughts and in my words and in my actions.
Dude. For a guy of few words, you definitely speak very clearly and concisely about who you are and who you aren't and whose you are. And I value that so much. Value that about Geoff Jensen so much. Uh, Man, we're getting close to wrapping up our time, so I want to kind of go through our Energizer round of questions for you. We started off, it'll be three. The first one was your core values, so I snuck that one in on you, and I'm glad you went long form in the explanation because I wrote these notes down, and I want to be intentional about remembering them. But so I'm going to ask you for a book recommendation speaking to entrepreneurs or specifically to entrepreneurs or entrepreneur husbands or entrepreneur fathers or people who balance that ultimate or in pursuit of the ultimate work-life balance. Give me a book. It could be one or two book recommendation that kind of changed or reframed the way you think about
Yeah,
that.
no, that's a great question. If you would have asked me, and I apologize to my mother, who was a reading teacher when I was growing up, I wasn't the biggest reader. I read Bo Jackson's book. I did 3 or 4 book reports for 3 or 4 consecutive years because that's all I wanted to do. So, but the fact that I can choose to read books that excite me, it's something that I probably never would have thought of. But I do enjoy it. I'll list a few that have really impacted me, and it's been a while, but I've read it multiple times, and it's a tried and true one. Is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. As I mentioned, when we started our business in 2004, both my business partner and I were kind of cut from the same cloth. We enjoyed visiting with each other, but we didn't have a whole lot of social skills when it came to interacting with people that we weren't very comfortable with. So reading that book really opened my eyes to how to interact with people in all walks of life. So that's been a very impactful one. I'm actually rereading James Clear's Atomic Habits as well, as we talked about the habits that you instill and you are committed to on a daily basis make all the difference in the world. You can have goals, you can have dreams and visions and aspirations, but if you aren't breaking it down to the granular level of having those habits that are going to propel you to where you need to go, it's kind of a hope and a prayer with those goals and dreams.
Dude, that's amazing. Atomic habits comes up a lot, and so it's profound. So entrepreneurs, if you watch this show, dads, if you watch the show, husbands, if you watch the show, and you want to become more intentional about who you are and what you stand for, pick up a copy of James Clear's Atomic Habits and Dale Carnegie's book. I skimmed through it, but forced myself again. I'm gonna finish reading it this year. I have 20 books on my list that I'm going to read this year. I'm declaring that. Geoff has the list, and he's been a good accountability partner for me. So I am 3/4 of the way through book 1 of the new year. Actually, no, I finished book 1 of the new year, and I'm 3/4 of the way through Stephen Furtick's Unqualified. And so my next one is Fear Hunters by Noah Elias, and then also I'll be rolling into Dale Carnegie. So I appreciate that a lot. And so one thing I'm going to interrupt our regularly scheduled Energizer round of questioning because I think it's important to speak on something that Geoff said, something that Geoff exemplifies, and something that I get a lot talked about in the social media world is work-life balance, or I've seen memes where I believe a lot of women or men even feel like that if you are physically fit and you value physically fitness, it's impossible for you to do anything else or value anything else or have an amount of balance. And I'm telling you right now, Geoff Jensen defies all of those low-level thoughts or limiting beliefs. You can value health and wellness and physical fitness. You can be an intentional husband and father. You can be a dynamic, passionate husband. You can be an involved, passionate father. You can be an aggressive, entrepreneurial leader, a foot washer. You can hold down a W-2 job. You can read. You can educate yourself. You can constantly level up. So I don't believe or buy into the lie that, you know, men are just capable of being one or two dimensional. I believe that with the right frame of mind, the right mindset, the right alignments, the right vision, the right core values, you can check every single box. Are there going to be days when you fall off the wagon in some areas? Absolutely. That's called falling short. The Bible says there's not even one good person, not even one. So, you're going to fall short. You're going to, rip your face off on certain days. You're going to get kicked in the cojones a lot of days. But learning to do hard things will condition your mind, body, and spirit to be able to persevere so that when someone says, how do you do work-life balance? You say, get a pen and paper. Because I'm going to tell you exactly how I do work-life balance, and you can go maybe apply that to your life. So don't buy into the myth that you can't have a six-pack, you can't have a dynamic marriage, you can't be an involved dad, and you can't be a successful business owner, because that's malarkey. But yeah, so last thing, springboarding off of books, one of the most impactful books I read in 2023 was a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Uh, Maybe by podcast episode number 10 or 12, I won't have to explain the book. But Blue Ocean Strategy basically is when you look at yourself versus other businesses or entrepreneurs or other people, you create a strategy that is your blue ocean, whereas everyone else is in a red ocean because they're carving each other up. They're racing to the bottom. It's competition. Nobody's completing each other. They're all just competing. They're all a bunch of thermometers and just fighting the world. And so, what is Geoff Jensen's blue ocean strategy to approaching life and business? What do you do, or how do you do it that's different than what the rest of the world says?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And maybe I'll piggyback on what you had touched on earlier. But I think when you talk about work-life balance and how to differentiate yourself, it comes back to core values and clarity as on what is important to you. And shout out to our mutual friend Steve Weatherford, who did a phenomenal podcast on just having your priorities in order. I think that's as men, sometimes we can get things inverted, we can get them out of order, and that's when we start to feel like things just aren't right, and the anxiety comes in and the stress starts to creep up. But as long for me, it was a game changer when he mentioned having 5 things that he focuses on in order. Number 1 is faith. Making sure that you're grounded in your faith, and that's something that it's not a sometimes thing, it's an every time. That's just who you are. It's not something that you do whenever convenient. So number 1 is faith. Number 2 is pouring into yourself. So as Travis mentioned, physical, spiritual, mental, making sure you're taking care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. Number 3 is the relationship with your wife, because that is a covenant relationship that needs to be intentional. For many, many years, I've got a phenomenal wife and a great marriage. I thought, hey, you just show up and it's great. And that's true. That's true oftentimes. However, the order of the world is typically entropy, right? If you do anything that you don't put intention into is going to decay. And that goes for your body, your business, your relationship. So, putting intentional times, date nights with your wife, that's extremely important. Trying to improve the communication, which I'm always trying to get better at. So wife is number 3. Number 4 is your family, and then number 5 is your business. And I think as men, sometimes we put number 5 at number 1 or at some other order. So being clear as to what is important in your life, making sure that you prioritize and make intentional time for those things so that you don't get out of order. And then that allows you to bring your best self to your customers, to your team, and then they see that, hey, this guy's different. What is this guy doing? He's not average. He doesn't accept average. He's got things figured out, at least on the exterior. That doesn't mean there's not some internal challenges and struggles from time to time, but always reverting back to that, kind of 5-pronged hierarchy, and understanding what is truly important and where you're spending your mind share and your time and what you're giving importance to. allows you to show up as good as you can, and it allows you to be able to pour into and overflow the cups of the people that are important to you in your relationships and in your business.
Man, Jeff, I can promise you that you don't realize the value that you're giving other people right now. So a blue ocean strategy, long and short of what Jeff said, is create a strategy. Figure out what matters most, figure out who you stand for and what you stand against, figure out who you are, develop some commitments, do some hard things that you can so you can persevere. Um, and then the culture of winning, and you can't build a culture of winning without a positive attitude, without value in health, valuing alignments and relationships, valuing being generous, and then ultimately doing all of that with a positive spirit. So last question in our Energizer round. This is again inspired from another book that I read, but close the show by giving uh, our audience, which we believe is dadtrepreneurs, give them Geoff Jensen's next 5 moves. If right now I want to get rolling, and we try to keep this as rapid as possible. If I want to get started, I want to turn my life around. I want to turn my business around. I want to turn everything around. What's the next 5 moves Geoff Jensen says you got to do?
That's a great question. And I'll come up with some moves. I don't know if it'll be 5, but I'll come up with some. So I think it goes back
That's fine. I was going to say three.
yeah,
Three is
no, you're
fine too.
good. You're good. So I think the first thing is to be intentional and set aside time. I think it's easy to say I'm going to do this and but carve out an afternoon, carve out a day, carve out whatever time you think you need to get clear on what is important to you. Until you have that destination, and you might be driving from Louisiana to Iowa, but you might end up in California. If you don't know where you're going, you how do you know how to get there? So that would be the first thing, is to get very, very clear, and not having all the answers is perfectly fine. I don't know if anyone has all the answers, but if you get as clear as you can, and then work backwards. So that would be the first thing that I would say. Number 2 is do a very, very deep dive and self evaluation on where you're at with your health. Yeah, we only have one temple, one body. Get to moving. Get someone to hold you accountable. Get a trainer. Get someone to help you with your nutrition. Start to take those baby steps towards being the best version of yourself with your health that you possibly can. That would be the second thing. And then start to analyze your relationships. Figure out who you want to be spending time with. Hopefully that's your wife. Hopefully that's your kids. Understand that time is short, and it goes by quickly. I think every year it goes by quicker and quicker. So being intentional and spending time and pouring into the relationships that truly matter to you, that's something that I would highly encourage you to look into. And I put it number 4, but quite frankly it's for me it's number 1, and it's been the game changer for me. I grew up in a fantastic family. We went to church, but understanding the difference between religion and relationship with Christ, understanding that difference. And religion is more something you do. Relationships is who you are, right? So getting clear on that has been such an eye-opening experience for me, because once you have that foundation, and I know I put it 4th, but I probably should revert to putting that at the top. Once I got clear on that and understand who I am and whose I am, that sets the foundation that I can build everything else on top of. I think oftentimes too many people don't have that foundation, and you can build a house with a crummy foundation. It may or may not last, but I choose to build my life on a foundation that I know is tried and true, and is going to ultimately allow me to have success no matter what the circumstances.
Dude, that's great. And the common theme here is what I love about Jeff is this has probably been our most strategic episode, but starting with a foundation of faith. Jeff's core values, his next 5 moves, his book recommendations, all the takeaways from this podcast are all centered around being intentional, knowing who you are and whose you are, maintaining great intentional relationships, doing everything with a foundation of faith, and taking care of your body, making sure that you can withstand the test of time, that you can be an inspirational value adder to a relationship, making sure that you can show up in your house as a dad, making sure that you can show up as a husband, and imagine people around us that we lead grow because of our action, not our words. We want our children to grow. They don't care about what we say. They care about what we do. They care about our character. And if you're raising daughters, I would bet 9 out of 10 that your daughter is going to end up looking for a guy just like dad. That's positive and negative. If you're I was a man in my life that I couldn't control my tongue. I was not a guy. I might go get this tattooed on my arm to not talk when I'm swimming or angry, but I was not a guy who could control my tongue. I've had to develop and still developing that skill set to go from emotional to passionate, because passion can be measured and metered. Emotions are not. We don't want to live by our emotions. So Geoff is the mother flipping real deal. He's a prime mover. He stands for everything that we stand for here. He inspired me to get out here. I might go do a cold plunge. I mean, we in Louisiana, there's a couple of ditches and bayous around here that's probably frozen.
Still like 30 degrees.
It's still
very cold for Louisiana.
For Louisiana. I did a cold plunge in my pool the other day, and then one of the first people I thought of was Geoff Jensen. So we have a mutual friend that I'm about to get on this show pretty soon that actually owns a cold plunge manufacturing company, and so I want to dive into cold exposure and things like that for sure very soon.
Hey, I hate to do it, and I know we're wrapping up, but Sprint van.
Oh yeah, Sprinter van.
There you go. Yeah, so
tell everybody about the Sprinter van thing, because when he first told me about the Sprinter van, I have Sprinter vans in our business, but they're for electrical technicians. Geoff's got a Sprinter van that's a unique deal, so I want Geoff to tell everybody
real quick.
about that. It's in Urbandale, Iowa, so if you're in Louisiana, probably not going to rent it, but maybe this will inspire somebody to get rolling in an area of business that maybe they could capitalize on.
Real quickly on that, it goes back to the power of vision and forethought. And another book I actually have that's a very good one is Vivid Vision, and it's by Cameron Herold. That's a phenomenal book, and it talks about thinking in 3-year terms. So I did that a few years ago, and actually on my Vivid Vision, I was talking about how I wanted to be able to attend my kids' events, whether it's dances or soccer or sporting events, whatever it is, and be able to travel in a Sprinter van. And the Sprinter van, as you mentioned, it's not for technicians. It's actually looks kind of like a private jet. And then to that point, the power of alignments. And my wife actually, she was the one that kind of pushed the idea over the edge. So long story short, about a year ago, we bought a Sprinter van, and we use it primarily as a rental, kind of like an Airbnb on wheels. But we also utilize that opportunity to take trips, and we're going to be going to Yellowstone this summertime, using it as to create memories and be intentional with our family. So it's been a fun little side business, and it's a really cool vehicle. So if you would have told me a few years ago I'd have a Sprinter van, I wouldn't have believed you. But it just goes to show that what you set your mind on, and what you believe, and what you think, and what you verbalize, there's a lot of power in that. So that's kind of the story of how the Sprinter van came to life.
Dude, that's awesome. I'm going to close this out with the scripture that I started with. Was this reminds me so much of, as a man thinketh, so is he. And the things that we speak over our life can be manifested because we know who we are and whose we are, and definitely what we stand for. It again. So Geoff Jensen, after this last hour, if you don't know what a prime mover is, Geoff Jensen, tell us where people can find you. I know you're not a man of many words, but if you want to follow his 100 burpee 30-day journey, he's probably halfway through it now, but tell us about your Instagram handle. That'd probably be the most popular way people can find Geoff Jensen.
Thank you.
Right?
I appreciate the time. It's been an awesome conversation. As I mentioned, I'm not much of a social media person, but tracking, I posted a few things on Instagram for my 100-mile race, and it seemed to resonate with a few people. So I do it twofold, as an accountability measure for myself, to make sure that I'm still pushing in the right direction, and then also to inspire other people. So I am on Instagram. I think it's gjensen15. So if that you can confirm, maybe put in the show notes if I'm wrong. So I'm still new to all this stuff, but I try to post things that show what I'm up to. and more so just to inspire people to shoot and to aim for a little bit higher than what they think they're possible.
Dude, absolutely. So G Jensen, that's the letter G, Jensen 15. We'll put that in the show notes. Jeff's very responsive, obviously, because he's an intentional guy. And I don't want to end this thing because I think you have so much value. So Geoff mentioned that he's a W-2, he holds a W-2 job. He's in medical device sales, and he does really well in that because of his core values, and that he's intentional, and that he builds quality relationships, and that he is a man of few words, but he's a man of quality words. And then I have some friends and relatives that own businesses like Smoothie Kings and privately owned smoothie shops. And so I know Geoff, we could do a whole nother episode on the power of mentorship and coaching. But hit Geoff up on Instagram if you fall into one of those types of businesses, because while he's going to self-proclaim that he's not an expert or a guru, he's going to be able to give you some tips that helped him just from a culture standpoint. I think a lot of business owners want to know the X's and O's of exactly what I need to do to ultimately put more money in the bank account. And a lot of times that advice can be very conditional upon the culture that lies within your business and the level of leadership and the level of ownership that you take as the owner of the business, the proprietor, or the manager. So if you're in that field, drop Geoff a line on Instagram. Like I said, he's responsive. I know he'd be glad to pour into you. I know that he's going to be able to give you some raw intentionality. Last story is we talked about Garrett Unkelbach, and so Garrett has an awesome podcast. He's a Navy SEAL. I don't even like to say ex-Navy SEAL, because to me, when you're in that fraternity, bro, you wear that badge. So he's a Navy SEAL. He's a pastor. He's a man of God on fire. But he has said some things to me that I can tell he said to Geoff and rubbed off on Geoff. And I booked a coaching call with Garrett one time about some things that were going on in my business. And Geoff probably knows some of the story. The coaching call was like a week from when I booked it to when I took it. And I got out a notebook and I started asking myself the questions that I felt like a Navy SEAL would ask me about why I haven't got certain things done in my life. And before the call, I had kind of kicked my own teeth in. So that way when Garrett started to do it, I knew that the direction that I was heading was right, that I got to remove the excuses, replace it with intentionality, get freaking clear on who you are and where you're going, and then get the right relationships, have some faith, and stop being a fraud to yourself. And I'll be darned if it wasn't the most profound 30 minutes I've spent in a long time. And that concept has rubbed off and become who Geoff Jensen is. So, Geoff, man, what an awesome hour. I love you, dude. Every time I spend time with you, I get better. I'm better. My day's better because I started it with Geoff Jensen.
Yeah,
I know,
man.
Nick,
you
maybe
so
you've
much.
got anything you want to say to him in closing?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time. Man, seriously, we need to go to the gym.
Yeah,
It's simple. Like,
no
man,
doubt.
I don't know, Geoff, if you realize how inspirational you are just by being honest and being open. And but I want to tell you, I've just met Geoff.
Yeah.
And man, I could just tell that you're a man of God and you're a sincere man in what you say, man of integrity. So we just appreciate you coming on, and I hope we can have you on again.
Yep. That concludes another episode of Prime Mover Podcast. Hey, I'm waving my hands in the air to flag everybody down. Like, this is what it's all about. If you came here to get some type of practical, tactical P&L or balance sheet way to be successful in your bank account and get all these things, man, look, it's okay if you don't follow us. But if you want things in life that sometimes is not measurable and may not even be seen, and you want a template for casting out a vision or having this work-life balance or being a prime mover, not a doormat, stick around, because these things are going to get hotter, and I'm going to get better as an interviewer. My questions will get deeper. So when Geoff Jensen's on here round 2, he might have his shirt off. So if you want to see Geoff Jensen with his shirt off and us get crazy on intentionality, stick around for Prime Mover Podcast. Thank you for joining us, where we ignite the engine of your success through faith, family, finance and fitness. And you guys go have an amazing rest of your week. It's a Wednesday here in South Louisiana, coldest temperature of the year. We got a business to run. We got things to be prime movers on. Jeff's got to go get his life rolling, doing the 25 things he does as a freaking drill sergeant and man of God. So, Geoff, thank you for being on Prime Mover Podcast. Hope you join us again,
Thanks,
man.
guys.